Hey class, it's Brian. I just wanted to get with you on a little review of lessons 1 through 3 and what we'll be kind of looking at the midterm. This won't be like a comprehensive study guide. I don't want you to think that everything I say on here is just going to be covered, but it's areas that I really want you to focus on. Some of it might be a little bit more specific. Some of it might be just, hey, might want to look into this particular lecture. One thing I want to touch with you on is the midterm will run from June 23rd to June 30th. You'll have to get with testing services on times and make sure that availability, depending on what location you're going to be taking the test. That being said, lessons 3 will still be running. They'll be due Monday, June 26th, I believe is the date, and then you'll also have lesson 4 rolling out that same Monday as well. So a little different for our summer classes that the proctored exam will be running the same time as other lessons. We have to keep going because we are 8 weeks as opposed to 16. We're trying to cover a lot of material in a short window. So let's just go ahead and get started. When you're going through looking for things to study, I would want to know what federal act requires the use of CPT and HCPCS Level 2 codes. I would look at through your lectures, really understanding when we're doing lesion excisions. Also knowing, if the repair, would you code a repair separately with the code? Your CPT guide really focus on the sections. Even though we haven't gone through every section, you may be asked, the radiology section of CPT includes a code range from what code to what code. I would know all those sections. So you're going to have, radiology, surgery, E&M, anesthesia, etc. Know all of those. Category, I would know everything about category 1, 2, and 3 codes. Also, like for example, category 3 codes, what's the range for those as well? I would know what your authoritative reference tool is when determining CPT codes. You can find that maybe in your lecture of the CPT punctuation and symbols. Just looking through my notes here. If you see me looking over to the side and not at the camera, it's because I am looking at notes here of stuff I really want you guys to cover. I would review your lecture on how to assign CPT codes. We're going to have, you'll have probably within the test probably about 10 coding questions, 10 to 12. All the information will be provided. Just like in coding 1, coding 2, you don't need your coding books at the testing center. Everything you need to answer the question will be provided. I would also know, when a patient comes in and they're seen for, let's say, a laceration of the knee. If the wound was repaired with suturing on the claim form, you're obviously going to have the procedure code from the CPT book, but what are we going to use to actually document or represent the laceration injury? Those would be ICD diagnosis codes. So, we obviously focus on CPT codes in coding 3, but that doesn't mean that ICD-10 codes are not used. I would know how to identify a HCPCS Level 2 code. I would know what medically unlikely edits are all about. Modifiers, NCCI modifiers, I would review that. I would also review your Appendix A and CPT guide. Know your P1 through P6 code modifiers, which is the physical status of the patient. When we're talking about E&M coding, really understanding the history, what elements belong in the history, what elements belong in, let's say, the exam portion, and what elements would you be looking at for medical decision making. Those 3 key components, I would really understand those. Guidelines. We have your 95 and 97 guidelines. So there are 2 sets of guidelines when we're talking about E&M coding. Understand those. And if there's any differences, I would understand those. I would be able to identify, I think I've already touched on this, but I'd be able to identify what is a Category 1 code, Category 2, Category 3. Know the differences. You might be given some questions where it says, which one of these is a Category 1 code. Each of them have their, that's where you're going to need to know the ranges or how they're formatted to be able to identify those. I would know about NCCI, like, for example, which organization or agency implemented NCCI. I would really study your CPT punctuation and symbols. So you might be given questions, how do you identify a revision of a code, or, how do you know if a code's been deleted? What's a new code look like? Etc. This seems pretty basic, but we don't always say it a lot. What does CPT stand for? What does HCPCS stand for? Might know that. Really, once we get through there, I'm trying to think. I would also understand, again, can't harp on enough, Category 1, 2, and 3 codes. Category 3 codes are used to report what, for example? Which of the following type of code would provide supplemental information and not be substituted for a Category 1 code? Are there anything that fall into that? Again, a lot of these I'm just kind of going through here. Some of these questions you may have already seen. I want you to go back and just really review them. So that's where we're at. See if there's anything else I really want you, modifiers, really understand those. Like I said, review your lectures on modifiers. There's going to be multiple questions on there, so you need to have a good understanding. Other than that, I think, really just reviewing the other work we've done. Like I said, I've kind of given you a good start here on some things I really want you to know. Not all the things I said here are covered on the test, but, if you study kind of what I told you, I think you're going to have a good understanding. You should be just fine. Like I said, you're going to have wound repair. I'd also really, really look over those, understanding, we have a lecture out there on wound repair, and especially when multiple wounds are repaired. So, you may have to add up the lengths of wounds, for example. So you need to understand all those guidelines. As far as E&M coding, I would also look at your lecture for time, billing based on time. If you remember, it has to be 50% or more of the visit was used in counseling or providing information to the patient. When I did audits for Mercy, we used to look at this, and some providers would bill based on time. A good example when they would do this, let's say a patient had some labs done from a previous visit. Now they've diagnosed them with diabetes. Now the patient's back in. They're not really going to do a history, a present illness. They're not going to do an exam. They're not going to do medical decision making. Really, all they're having them back in for is to basically how they're going to be dealing with everything going forward. So most of their time, if not almost 100% of it, but it has to be at least 50%, is spent in the coordinating and counseling of family members. Could be maybe a child was diagnosed with diabetes, so they're educating the parents. So a lot of that time, so you'll see notes that don't have a history and it don't have an exam, but it discusses what was in the visit. So understanding billing based on time, I would understand that. One thing you always want to look at for proper E&M coding is, where the patient met with the provider. That could make a big difference on what you can bill and how you bill. Obviously, if the patient met the provider in the hospital, you're not going to provide an office visit. It's not an office visit; it'd be a hospital inpatient service. Excision of multiple lesions. I would understand how those are reported. From that, like I said, I would really it's just a matter of, I'm going to provide you some information and say, what code is it? And all the codes are provided in the question. That would be options. So again, you don't need your textbook. This video is about 10 minutes now. I think that's probably long enough. If you guys have any questions, put them in the discussion board. We can work through them, or if you don't want to, if it's something more, not a question about the test, but maybe more grade related, you can always email me or contact me that way. Good luck, guys, and again, keep rolling on lesson 3 and 4 because it'll keep on going even as the exam's rolling. So good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.